All right, let's journey back in time. We're going to dive deep into the story of the original Olympic Games. Now, you probably know today's Olympics, but trust me, the ancient games, they were a whole different ballgame. So, what do you think the original Olympics were really for? Just sports, right? To see who could run the fastest or throw the farthest? Well, you might be surprised. The actual reason these games started was way bigger and honestly a lot more intense. It had everything to do with the gods. You heard that right. The Olympics were, first and foremost, a massive religious festival. It was all about honoring Zeus, the king of all the Greek gods. Think of it like this. The entire thing was a huge party for Zeus. And the sports? Well, that was just the headline act. Every single thing they did was a form of worship. Okay, so let's get into where this all started. The story doesn't begin in some big, busy city. Nope. It starts in a really sacred place called Olympia. And believe it or not, it's tied to a hero who was supposedly the strongest man to ever walk the earth. We're talking way, way back. The first recorded games happened in 776 BC. I mean, that's ancient. And the legend? The story goes that they were founded by the one and only Hercules. Yeah, that Hercules. He supposedly started the games to celebrate after finishing his 12 famous and pretty much impossible tasks. So the games didn't happen every year. They were held every 4 years, like clockwork. And this 4-year cycle was so important, it actually became how the ancient Greeks measured time. They called it an Olympiad. It was like a shared calendar that all the different and often rival city-states could agree on. All right, but just getting to the games was a huge deal. You couldn't just, book a flight or hop on a train. It was a long, tough journey to a very special place. And it was all made possible by this incredible promise of peace, one that literally stopped wars. Now, you have to understand, Olympia wasn't a city with houses and shops. It was a holy sanctuary. Picture this. Massive complex of temples, altars, and top-notch sports facilities all just sitting there. For the festival, thousands of people, athletes and fans, would flock to it. But the rest of the time, only a few priests and groundskeepers lived there. And the layout of Olympia tells you everything you need to know. You had the gigantic Temple of Zeus, which was the heart of the religious side of things. I mean, it had this huge gold and ivory statue of the god inside. And then, right next door, you had the practical stuff. A simple running track called the stadium, a courtyard for wrestlers called the palestra, and a gymnasium for jumpers and throwers. It was the perfect mix of worship and workout. So here's the big question. How did they get thousands of people from city-states that were constantly fighting with each other to travel safely? The answer is incredible. The sacred truce. Heralds would go out all across the Greek world and announce that the truce was in effect. All wars had to stop. And if you broke it, your city-state faced huge fines. And, even worse, you were banned from the games. It was like a divinely enforced timeout for the entire country. Okay, so you've made the long journey. The truce is holding. Can you compete? Well, not so fast. Getting into the games wasn't a free-for-all. The rules for who could actually compete for glory were super, super strict. Yeah, take a look at this checklist. First off, you had to be a free citizen, so no slaves. You had to be male. You had to speak Greek. And the training commitment was no joke. You had to have been training for 10 months back home, and then you had to do one final intense month of training right there at Olympia, where the judges could watch your every move. And women? They couldn't even be spectators. Unmarried girls did have their own separate games, the Heracles Games, but it was a much smaller affair. And before any of the real action started, there was this incredibly important ceremony on day one. It wasn't about sports at all. Every athlete and every judge had to stand in front of a menacing statue of Zeus and swear this oath. It was a very serious moment, a promise to compete fairly and with honor. It really drove home the point. This is a sacred event, not just some sporting competition. All right, let's get to the good stuff, the events themselves. This is where athletes went to become living legends. In these competitions, they were designed to push competitors to their absolute limits, testing every bit of their speed, strength, and skill. First up, we have the pentathlon, which was basically the search for the ultimate, all-around athlete. It wasn't enough to be just a great runner or a great thrower. You had to be amazing at 5 different things. The long jump, where they used stone weights to launch themselves farther. The discus, the javelin, a sprint called the stade race, and finally, wrestling. The winner was considered the perfect athlete. Now, if you thought that was intense, check out the combat sports. These were seen as crucial training for warfare, so they were incredibly tough. You had wrestling, where the goal was to throw your opponent 3 times. Then there was boxing, which was brutal. They just wrapped leather straps around their hands. But the most extreme was pancreation. It was a wild mix of boxing and wrestling with almost no rules. Seriously, the only things you couldn't do were bite or gouge someone's eyes out. That's it. The goal was total submission. But believe it or not, the most dangerous event of them all wasn't even a combat sport. It was the 4-horse chariot race. Imagine thundering around a track for 12 laps, pulled by 4 powerful horses in a rickety chariot. It was the biggest spectacle of the games, held in a huge arena called the Hippodrome. The speed, the chaos, the sharp turns, crashes were constant, and they were often deadly. So, you risk life and limb in a chariot race or a pancration match, and you win. What's the prize? What do you get for all that effort and danger? Well, the official prize you got right then and there, it's probably not what you're thinking. That's it, seriously. No gold medal, no trophy. The winner's prize was a simple wreath woven from the branches of a sacred olive tree. It had 0 monetary value, but what it symbolized, it was priceless. It was a sign of the highest honor, a mark of favor from the gods themselves. Because the real rewards came when you got back home. That olive wreath turned you into a living legend. You'd get a hero's parade, statues built in your honor, big cash bonuses, and, get this, free meals for the rest of your life. You were basically set. And some cities would do something incredible. They'd literally tear down a part of their city wall for you to walk through. The message was clear. A city with an Olympic champion is so strong, it doesn't even need walls for protection. So these games ran for over 1,000 years. I mean, that's an incredible stretch of history. But all good things come to an end, and yet the story isn't over, not by a long shot. So what happened? Well, the Roman Empire took over, and as it became Christian, things started to change. A festival dedicated to a pagan god like Zeus, that was seen as a big problem. So, in 393 AD, the Roman Emperor Theodosius I banned all pagan festivals, and that included the Olympics. The site at Olympia was abandoned, and over the centuries, it was literally buried by earthquakes and floods, completely lost to time. Just look at this timeline. From 393 AD all the way to 1896 AD, for almost 1,500 years, the Olympics were gone. They were just a memory, something you'd read about in ancient texts. But then, in the 1800s, archaeologists dug up the lost ruins of Olympia. What they found was so inspiring that it sparked a movement to bring the games back, which led to the very first modern Olympics in Athens in 1896. And that connection to the ancient past is something we still see today. It's so cool. Before every single modern Olympic Games, the Olympic flame is lit right there in the ancient ruins of Olympia. They use the sun's rays and a special mirror, just like the ancients did. It's this powerful, unbroken thread that ties our games today directly back to their sacred origins. Which leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. The ancient Greeks believed that the games brought out the very best of humanity, that pushing your limits in sport was a noble pursuit. So does that still hold true today? Is that idea of striving to be better, faster, stronger, and bringing the world together to do it still the real heart of the Olympics? It's a fascinating thought, and it connects us, right now, to those athletes competing for glory thousands of years ago.